Hey there, Changemakers, and welcome to the Seeding Social Good podcast by Turnkey. I'm Katrina Van Huss, founder of Turnkey, and this content is a deep dive into what works to help us all do more good faster. Raising money with events has been getting harder. Acquisition got harder, retention got lower, event leadership is losing their jobs. Why? Turns out we were systematizing the wrong thing. We systematized events when we should have been systematizing communities. Turnkey's Kate Bullard-Barnett and Dr. Otis Fulton tell us more. Here we go.
Robin Paterson, who we have been cheering on for years and watching her and the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation thrive for years, and our very own Otis Fulton, our VP of Psychological Strategy that we have on the team here at Turnkey. And what we wanted to do today is talk with you about a common theme that we've been seeing in the industry recently, which is what is the difference between a community and an event? And what are the psychological factors going into both, being a part of both and at an organization? And really, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what that really means. So what we want to start out with today is the end. What happened that made us go, we should have a webinar with Robin. So we're going to talk about the end result KPIs first. So Robin, what was the end result?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I'm happy to share that in our first year of hosting Rose Up, the end result was more than we could have ever imagined. And we reached nearly 1,500 people through donations and registrations, 500 just alone through registrations, and raised approximately $125,000. We also ended up with our first ever fully inclusive community fundraising event. There's no fee, no fundraising minimum, no physical or athletic requirements, and anyone could do anything to participate at any time from anywhere, a true DIY event. And the biggest win for us overall was that people living with cystic fibrosis were able to participate in an event together with no restrictions.
What happened before Rose Up became a thing? What was life like for you and your community?
Yeah, so how did we get here? And, why was it such a big deal for the CF Foundation? 125,000 may not sound like a lot on the fundraising spectrum, and 500 registrants may even feel low in comparison to other successful events. But really for us, it was about so much more than just how much we raised and how many people we were able to register. It was about the community, about people living with CF, and the creation of a space where they could be together and connect with one another on the same level in support of our mission. Now, prior to Rose Up and even prior to the pandemic, people living with cystic fibrosis have been following strict infection control guidelines to help reduce the risk of cross-infection. These guidelines impact how people living with CF interact with one another when attending our CFF events in the clinic and hospital setting, as well as everyday life. You may have seen the movie 5 Feet Apart, which gives you a glimpse into the life of someone living with cystic fibrosis. But people living with CF are asked to remain 6 feet apart from one another when attending our outdoor CFF events and even clinic and hospital settings. And we only permit one person with CF to attend any of our indoor events. The risk of cross-infection is just too great. Something sadly I think we've all become familiar with thanks to the pandemic. And so they follow strict guidelines to keep themselves and others living with CF safe and healthy and comfortable when attending our events. People with CF are living longer and more fulfilling lives today, thanks in part to specialized CF care and to a range of treatment options. The life expectancy of someone born with CF today has doubled in the last 30 years. And until Rose Up, the only opportunity for people living with CF to come together was through an annual virtual conference, which is truly an amazing experience in itself, but serves a different purpose and does not include a fundraising component. So as we dove into the virtual event space throughout the pandemic, like all of us in the peer-to-peer industry, we began to see an opportunity, as did our community. With every virtual or hybrid event that we hosted, we saw more and more new people get involved. Specifically adults living with CF and CF families who weren't comfortable attending our in-person events. Why now? Simply, I think because this is the first time they could be together safely and experience the event in the same way as others attending.
Yeah, so would you say it's safe to describe what events and things like that have been like for your community, and say maybe social distancing has always been in place for
Social
CF
distancing
patients?
has definitely always been in place. We heard a number of our families even joke at the start of the pandemic that they made social distancing and mask wearing cool and had been doing it long before we were all required to. We even saw some of our CF moms take to social media to provide experiences and guidance to new parents sending their kids to school for the first time that had to wear masks. So yeah, they've been doing this for quite some time. It's just a part of what they're used to in their daily lives.
What happened? How did Rose Up become a thing? What was the order of operations of this thing?
3 amazing women living with CF came up with an idea. They wanted to create a way for people living with CF to work together to advance the mission, simply put, right? They wanted it to be fun. They wanted to be impactful, to feel inclusive. And this was probably one of the most important pieces to them because they finally felt a part of things as a result of participating in our virtual or hybrid events that have been popping up across the year. And they did not want to see that go away. And they made that known through surveys we sent out and focus groups that we had together, and even just in one-on-one sessions with their volunteers, we heard that loud and clear. And lastly, they also wanted to create a space where they could connect with one another, support one another, build relationships, friendships, and for it not just to be a one-time thing, but to last for years to come. A movement, they kept saying to us. They didn't know exactly what it looked like, nor did we, and how it all would work, but their passion ensured us all that we could take it on and that we could create something great with the help from our community and really with our community leading the way. So we recruited an internal team to support efforts across departments. We recruited a committee that was full of people living with CF, and our 3 amazing women became our chairs and leaders for the effort. They will tell you they are not. They are one of many who lead this effort, but they really are truly amazing leaders for this group. And we met almost every day because we only had a short 8 weeks and worked a lot of hours to build what became known as Rose Up. The first ever virtual fundraising movement that was created solely and led by solely people living with CF to raise both fundraising dollars and awareness through creative, meaningful acts that advance the mission. So in its first year, we saw great success. We reached, as I said, more than 1,500 people, through donations and registrations, which was beyond our wildest expectations. And we raised approximately 125 grand. But again, it was just so much more than that. A movement was created, a community's now been built, and we are continuing to learn the amazing things this group has ahead of them and the impact that they're going to have on our mission for years to come.
Yeah, and from what I've learned through these conversations that we've had with you is really how people living with CF that came to you and said they wanted to do Rose Up and this whole concept, it really does sound different than the way they've engaged with the CF Foundation in the past in fundraisers. Can you talk a little bit about how active the CF community has been in the fundraising events that you've had in the past and why they felt like this was different?
Absolutely. So our CF, people living with CF have been involved with our events for years, but really in just a different capacity. They may have walked on a walk team with their family. They may have participated in a hike event if they were healthy enough, or a cycle event, again, if they were healthy enough, or gotten involved with other avenues, our themed events, spoken at our themed events, right, as a bid for a cure speaker to provide that mission moment. And all of those things are extremely meaningful to our community. But we didn't have anything that was built by them and created for them. It was really created for the entire community in mind. And not that the entire community is not in mind with this event. It's just with the CF community, our people living with CF leading the way, that makes it so different.
Let's talk about what we learned here out of this. I know we could probably talk about this all day, but if we had to distill it down to some key takeaways on this event versus a community conversation that we're having, what do you think those takeaways would be?
A number of things. We learned probably most important, the importance of building community versus solely just an event, as we're talking about, and how creating that space where our community members can connect and come together and talk with one another and co-create with one another will lead to even greater impact. We learned to lean into our community and really take their lead, not to expect them to meet us where we are, but to meet them where they are, and not to make any assumptions of how they want to be involved with the foundation. Most organizations, including ourselves, created a DIY platform and program and then expect people to use it. But in this scenario, we saw an opportunity to take a different approach. And we relied on the community and listened to the community to help us create a true DIY event built and created by the community. And we're glad we did. We learned to trust and to dare to be different, not just to do things one way because they've always been done that way. A lesson I think that many of us learned through the pandemic. We also learned to listen, but to really, really listen. What is it they want? What is it they see as important? And how can we support those items? And last but not least, we learned this was needed, and that they want to feel included in the fight. And the way that we had been structuring things wasn't meeting all of their needs. They wanted to be involved in helping to advance our mission in the same way as others, not to be isolated in a different capacity through infection control guidelines only. This slide, I just want to point out, does show a few pics of our committee members in their rose-up sunglasses. And we like to joke that, and not even joke, it's a true statement, their future and the future of Rose Up is bright. And so sunglasses are needed, but love this pic. And these are just amazing community members that are helping to drive us in this effort.
I'm going to throw this over to Otis to talk a little bit about the psychology here. So Otis, how is being part of a community different from participating in an event? That's the key question here today.
Yes, it is. And, Robin mentioned the word community many times. We see this as the future of successful fundraising. And that's why we were so excited to talk with Robin more and encourage her and hear her experience. So let's talk about for a minute, just about what is community. We've usually defined our community as the people on our email list. But that's really not what community is all about. Now, to our credit, we knew that these people, guys on our email list, had one thing in common that they cared about. They care about our mission. And we've measured that in dollars and cents. And what we haven't understood so well is the second part of community that Robin talked about. When we talk to our list, there's usually only one-way communication. We email them, we've innovated, and we send them texts and so forth, but very rarely they talk back to us. Now, real community, the kind that Ron was talking about, is a group of people with a common belief or interest and a way to communicate with each other. So they communicate with one another, not just talk back to us. Community membership is one way people define their identity. Now, we're all members of all kinds of communities, I'm sure you can think of. And we know that identity is a major shaper of behavior. So that's why this identity aspect is so important. And so why is communicating with others in a group so important, as Robin was describing? As people engage with one another, they have experiences that reinforce their identity as someone committed to CFF in this case. And this creates a real emotional connection. So community membership and identity, they kind of reinforce each other. It's this virtuous loop. The more you feel like you're part of the CFF community, the more it impacts your identity. You get more emotionally connected, and it just goes round and round. And that's exactly what we want. The industry has focused on events because they're simple. The dynamics of community that Robin was describing, and I think she'll tell you, it's not so simple. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this, there's a wonderful new book by Francesco Ambrogetti called Hooked on a Feeling: How the Passion and Devotion for Good Causes Become Memories and Identity. It's not an easy read necessarily, but it really is worth the time. Ambrogetti is with UNICEF. To date, organizations have focused much of our attention on creating the best practices for setting up and constructing events. But as Robin will attest, we've got to turn our attention now to how to recruit to and nurture supporters in a community, just as they have done. So what's the future of events? In our estimation, events will still be a part of what we do, but events live in the community. They're community goals, if you will. They'll come and go, and they're still important because there's a well-defined goal that we can use to recognize people for their success. But events can't be the plan, the goal. Events are just a part of your plan. Studying Facebook, we learned how important it is to take advantage of user-generated content. Robin mentioned kind of the back and forth between the individuals in that community. The thing that encourages other people to join a group or a community and drives engagement is the posts from the community. It was really interesting. Last year, Good United did a study just of a typical ad hoc Facebook group set up for an event for the American Cancer Society. And they showed that group participants took an average of 20 actions. They made 20 comments or posts during each event. That's a lot of engagement. And one thing it tells you is it's a great way to replicate the in-person fundraising experience online. But, it goes beyond that. When people can chat with one another and share ideas, they feel like they're more a part of the organization's community. And the upshot is they're more likely to consistently donate and participate in whatever it is. If it's an event, if it's just a pop-up poll, whatever it is, they're more likely to engage in whatever the community is sponsoring. So the bottom line is participating in communities, it just makes people happy. We seek out communities because they're satisfying for us, and delivering happiness by making things happen in a community. And I think of it as like a secret superpower that successful nonprofits will learn how to create and nurture going forward.
What would you say to somebody who has spent years developing the brand and really wants brand adherence very closely watched or monitored? What do you think with all the changes in digital fundraising that we've got, TikTok, anything like that, where we're kind of letting go of that control? How do you think that plays into the community? Are they at odds with one another? Can they exist together in a beautiful way? Where does that line go?
I think that people need to think about brand in a different way than most people think about it. To me, brand is not what people think about your organization. It's what people feel about your organization. And if they have the feeling that your organization is a place, your community, let's say, is some place that wants to know their thoughts, wants to know their feelings, their ideas, and so forth, they're going to have an extremely good feeling about your brand. And so, your brand is just not what you look like, what people think about you. It's really what people feel about you. So all the things that Robin was describing, to me, is a way to enhance their brand amongst their thousands of people. Robin, do you concur with that?
I definitely concur with that. And it's something that we are going through at the moment. So it's kind of spot on. And we feel, not to say that too much, but the same, that brand is really a feeling. It's more than just a look, right? It's not a color. It's a feeling that you get from that organization.
Robin, what do you think you guys are going to do in year 2?
Well, we're in the midst of Rose Up 2021, year 2 for this incredible event. We've set a hefty goal this year to raise $350,000. The committee would have liked us to set the goal at $1 million, but we had to temper that, and that will come in years in the future, and to really simply recruit more people to join the movement. This year's event will take place on Friday, September 17th. But as I mentioned before, Rose Up is more than just a one-day event and just one event. It truly is a movement, and it's already happening as we speak. We officially kicked off on Wednesday, August 18th, quickly surpassing last year's fundraising total and recruiting more than 100 people in the first 24 hours after the kickoff. We're working right now with the community and the committee to finalize our plan on how we're going to engage the community, both leading up to and on Rose Up Day. And really our goal is to feature as many stories as possible from our community in the days and weeks leading up to the event.
What are the first 3 things a nonprofit should do to shift the focus from events to communities?
I think the first thing that you have to do to shift from events to communities is be open and willing to change. I think that's the biggest step that most people take and most people go through, and is the biggest challenge, is that change is hard for a lot of people. It's not typical that most people thrive in change or look for it really on the daily. And especially, I feel like in the peer-to-peer industry, we've all been doing things a certain way for so long, it just feels natural. So really trying to step outside of your comfort zone, think differently, get creative and innovative, and listen as much as you can to your community around you to really hear what it is that they need and how best you can support them.
Otis, how about you? What would you say to that one?
I couldn't agree more. And I also think that, you've got to look within your organization. Having major gifts firewalled off from peer-to-peer, firewalled off from legacy giving, just is not the way that this model works. You have to look at all of the people in your community and look at their lifetime value. And so lifetime value becomes kind of the holy grail that everyone looks to. It's and it makes these kind of artificial silos seem unproductive and silly.
It's important to note, though, that's where we were. So prior to this as well, we had just gone through, a lot of internal viewing and really understanding the lifetime value of our donors, our participants, and looking at how we approach things, and realized that we needed to drop the silos, right? Like, as he was just talking, it's so important to really approach things as one organization with one goal. And the pandemic accelerated that for us so much. I think many are like that. And we had to really just reposition ourselves and come together as one organization towards one goal. And I think as a result, this opportunity presented itself more clearly, which is why it really came to fruition in the way that it did.
You talked about the first three things that they should do, but what is involved in changing the culture?
I think another big piece would just be listening, really listening, and talking with your community. And what we mentioned even before is creating that space or opportunity for them to talk amongst themselves and for you to get out of the way and just listen. Because a lot of times, what we found is, and this is just something we've always just really believed so wholeheartedly, and with the CF community itself, is we have to listen and really take their leadership and their guidance versus us continually try to provide the guidance back and the leadership to them. And we learn a lot every time we do it. And we learn new things. We learn that we evolve over the years and we need to reapproach things. And like you just said, Kate, redefine, really who we are, what our events are, what the purpose of them are, our KPIs, and even how people view us. As Otis mentioned earlier, it's so much about feeling. And I think it 100% is in this scenario, right? It's about how they feel, not about what we look like, not about the colors displayed or the logo. It's about how they feel when they come to one of our events or experience one of our events or opportunities, and how they feel as being a member of our community. It really makes a big difference.
I'd like to get my company involved. What's an easy way to share the feeling to connect and encourage them to join rather than think it's another event or nonprofit thing? I want my company to be a community in this movement. Any advice?
We secured our first national sponsor for the event through sharing a story and really providing that perspective on the impact through that story.
One element to the Rose Up story is, they came to you with this idea and made an ask of you. What can an organization do to make people feel comfortable with coming up with the idea and asking in the first place? What can you do to help foster those ideas?
I think there's, probably multiple things that can be done, but probably the most important we've even talked about is, one, really being open and making that known, it's a little bit of a culture shift, right? As we talked about, for years, we've been leading the way, guiding the way, saying this is how things should be done. There's also been restraints, right, with the brand and how it's used. And I think it's really getting out of the way, almost in a sense, and being open and willing to really, really listen. Anyone can listen on a phone call or a meeting, but do you really actually hear when you're listening what's being said? I think is the bigger question you have to always ask. And that's when you really do start to get down to where things really are stemming from and what means the most, and that feeling that we're talking about, understanding, and then how that then translates to other things. But I definitely feel that through our listening power last year, and even in years leading up to last year, and all of the talking we were doing with the community, not at the community, also provided that opportunity for them to feel that there was an opportunity for them to share their ideas and take a chance and not be afraid, to bring something not just to a local chapter, but to the national level. because they saw that we were open and that we were willing to listen and take that chance.
What is the best way to find the appeal to approach others in a movement?
Just as Robin said, to ask. And, I might also throw in to Robin's point, one of the things that I think is a very good idea is to ask people to volunteer to engage others, not just to fundraise, but to really become moderators in chats and all these kinds of things. To be kind of we want you to be a champion for CFF, and that means engaging other people. The American Cancer Society had almost 100 events last year, and they found that starting these Facebook groups, one for each event, 95% of the people that they brought that came to these groups were new. So this is a great way to really recruit folks, as well as, just to work your same old list.
Are there tactical things we should stop doing or start doing to shift the focus on communities?
The way that we have kind of stratified our list to date has been more one-time donor, monthly donor, regular donor, et cetera, et cetera. So we really transactionalized the relationships. So even getting to a little bit better understanding of who we're talking to is going to allow us to really message them in a much more intelligent way. We're trying to understand, what are you getting out of being involved with the organization? And that's going to be different for someone whose family member is affected by CFF and someone who really has no personal connection. Very, very different. So you're going to message them differently.
Or she wants to move away from Facebook and social media to their own platform. What advice do you have for getting people to engage and get that online community off the ground, like an in-house, more proprietary place for them to have that community?
We're still utilizing social media, and that's really where we've seen this movement take off, is through not just national accounts that we have at the foundation, but mostly through personal social media accounts. And that community grassroots effort that occurs by working through personal accounts.
It's tough because, Facebook is where people already are. It's where they go to be social, and you're asking them to socialize. The separate platform just makes it more challenging because they've got to go there independently. I would ask them to bring a friend, to do all the things that you're doing on platforms like Facebook to get people to engage. But it's just a little bit harder to lift off out of the gate.
To my knowledge, I don't know anybody who has done that successfully.
Change starts with just one person, you. If today's episode got your gears turning, please share it with your network. And hey, why not drop us a review? It helps more people find us and spread the good. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Katrina signing off from the Seeding Social Good podcast by Turnkey. Stay inspired, keep making waves, and let's create a better world together.